Hi, I'm Corey Malloy, and this is Janae Wahlberg. Together we co-founded Imperishable, which is a blog about health and wellness, fitness, and travel. And we are here with Dr. Layne Norton. He holds a PhD in nutritional sciences from University of Illinois. In addition to that, professional powerlifter, natural pro bodybuilder, founded his own supplement line called Carbon and his own brand BioLane. You may recognize him from YouTube and articles that he's written. So we are thrilled to be interviewing him today and talk to him about hormonal response to dieting and weight loss. So let's just get right into it. We would love to know, just generally speaking, how our hormones respond to weight loss and dieting in the extreme dieting sense.
Yeah, so there's a lot of different responses. What you find is that the response to caloric restriction, it's basically controlled starvation is what your body recognizes as restriction. Now, depending on how severe that is going to be how severe the response is. But if you look at things like kind of what we believe to be the major regulator of kind of your metabolism as far as hormones go, which is leptin, as you diet, your fat cells shrink. Or as you lose body fat, they shrink. And as you gain body fat, they expand. Well, when you shrink them, they send out less leptin. So leptin is actually a hormone secreted by your fat cells that communicates with other areas of, especially the brain and hypothalamus. And when leptin gets lower, your hunger goes up, your metabolic rate goes down. It also impacts other things like reproductive system, libido. And so it's kind of like a master control switch of metabolism in terms of hormonal regulation. You can look at other things like thyroid hormone. Those will tend to drop as you diet down. Now, not always out of the normal range. Sometimes they'll stay within normal ranges, but you do tend to get a decrease with that. When you also look at things like ghrelin. Ghrelin is a hormone that acts in opposition to leptin and will go up during dieting, and actually the function of ghrelin is to make you hungry. In fact, if you take animals and you genetically modify them to where they oversecrete leptin, they will just continue to eat and they will never get full. So they have constant hunger. Opposite thing with leptin. If you knock out leptin out of a rat, we actually have these. They're just like these big balls of fur because they become so obese because they can never get full. So those hormones kind of act in opposition, and during dieting, leptin will go down, ghrelin will go up. As I discussed, T3 will go down. Sex hormones also have some different things that happen, specifically with men. Testosterone goes down. In fact, if you look at there's been about, I think, 4 or 5 case studies on natural bodybuilders, and if you look at their response to dieting, by the time that they're ready for stage, they're on all of them, all 5 or 4 or 5, their testosterone, they were hypogonadal. They were down out of the normal range. And I know for myself, when I competed, I had my testosterone assessed, and I was low testosterone by that measure. Now, being 7 years since I ever did a show, I'm actually like right at the upper end of the high normal. So it's not like I was somebody who was like low or middling testosterone to begin with. I actually run like a very high natural testosterone level, but just dieting down for 24 weeks, getting stage lean, mine was out of the normal range. And then you have things like, just anything, a lot of it's energy metabolism. Cortisol tends to go up. You even tend to get hormones that are kind of responsible for sleep regulation. You get kind of dysregulated sleep. You'll wake up a lot, or the sleep won't be as restful. Your body doesn't really like you to be very, very lean, and so it kind of responds in a way that would make you not want to be very, very lean,
Right.
Which is making you uncomfortable. So anybody that's dieted down for a long period of time or gotten really lean knows that it's just a very uncomfortable feeling. And as kind of like the response goes, it's going to be in proportion. So if you're just looking for somebody who's looking to lose a few pounds, is this something you really need to worry about? But if you're somebody who's been dieting for a long time, or you're kind of a chronic yo-yo dieter, or somebody who's dieting specifically to get really, really lean, then you're probably going to be looking at some of these things happening more often.
Okay. So for someone that is just trying to lose a few pounds, what are some ways that they can avoid these detrimental effects happening?
Yeah, so I think one of the biggest things is to make sure you don't get caught in the cycle of yo-yo dieting. I know people who basically have spent years losing and gaining the same 5 to 10 pounds, except it's not the same. Because when you diet, you tend to lose lean body mass and fat. but when you regain it, you tend to regain all fat. And so, and in fact, you actually regain it differentially. There's actually data to show that you tend to regain your fat mass in your trunk compared to your extremities, especially if you regain it quickly. And also, there is some data, although it's only in rats, but that showed if you diet and then regain weight very, very quickly. Now, I think this is more of these were rats that lost a seventh of their body weight. They actually show that you produce new fat cells. So you actually, we have what's called kind of your body fat set point or settling point, which is kind of a range of body fat that your body kind of likes to be in just normally. So if you think about before you ever started dieting, whenever that was, your body probably had a range of where it kind of liked to settle. And you really had to overeat to get out of that, and you really had to consciously undereat to get lower than it. So that tends to be where we just kind of default to. And leptin would actually be kind of your thermostat. So think about an air conditioner. If you have it set at 75, if the room temperature gets up to 76, 77, the aircon kicks on, pumps it back down. If it gets to 73, 72, the heat kicks on, pumps it back up, right, to hold up that temperature. That's kind of what leptin does. So as you're losing body fat, leptin is going to, you're going to secrete less leptin, hopefully lower your metabolic rate, keep you from getting much leaner. Now, that set point, we believe, is sensed by the size of the individual fat cells. So the problem with regaining weight and putting on more fat cells is if you did that, when you got back up to your previous fat mass, your pre-diet fat mass, like let's say you started at 150 pounds, got down to 130, and then went back up to 150, and you had this issue happen. Well, the problem would be that now you're back up to your previous fat mass, but if you regained fat cells, each individual cell is going to be smaller because you have more of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And since leptin secretion is sensed by the size of the fat cell, you would actually still feel like you're in a deficit, if that makes sense. So I don't think that's something that has been shown in humans yet. So, but it's pretty interesting, especially when you look at the data on weight regain. But if you're just looking to lose a few pounds, my advice is really focus, get it done, and then focus on the actions that will keep it off. Most people regain all the weight they lose, and this is borne out by the data absolutely. Within a year of weight loss, 70% of people will regain all the weight they lost. Within 2 years, it's 85%. Within 3 years, it's 95%. So, and then of those people, 1/3 to 2/3 will actually add more body fat than they originally started with.
Wow.
So what that says is you're actually better off before you started dieting. Now, weight loss can be successful. It's just that only about 5% of people are successful. So if you look at what makes somebody successful, they don't yo-yo diet, they're consistent, they practice some form of self-regulation, whether it be calorie counting, Weight Watchers points, macro tracking, time-restricted eating, whatever it is, they're doing some form of cognitive restraint, and they're doing it in a way that's sustainable for them. It has to be a lifestyle. So the problem with most people is they diet in a way, think about the fad diets that are out there, whatever Dr. Oz is promoting this week, the HTC diet, keto diet, intermittent fasting, not that any of those diets are inherently bad in and of themselves, but for most people, if you can't sustain that style of dieting, if you can't see yourself doing it for the long term, it's not going to work, because once you go back to doing what you did before, you're just going to put it all back on. So really you have to focus on modifying your behaviors and your habits, right? My friend Sohee Lee, she's doing a master's in psychology with an emphasis on eating habits. And she said she always notices people's habits. And I went out to stay with her for a few days in Arizona. And she said she noticed my habits where I didn't even realize I did this. That I still ate, like she cooked like banana bread and she cooked some other high calorie things. I never declined any of that. But my default for my other foods was I had egg whites for breakfast. And I used the low calorie butter spread. And I would use like lower fat or lower calorie options whenever I was using the sugar substitute, So by doing that, I allowed myself more flexibility to have those things that she was also cooking. So that's just kind of an ingrained habit for me. And tracking is just a habit for me because I've done it for so long. It really doesn't take much out of my day. And so you have to focus on those habits, because willpower is not enough. And there's tons of studies to show that willpower alone is not sufficient to make a big change in your lifestyle, because that is a finite resource. And like, if you think about whenever, I don't know your guys' diet history, but whenever you struggle with the diet, a lot of it is usually like, what was going on in your life? Did you have a lot of stress? And it's usually at the end of the day, right? Like, because we've had a long day, maybe stressful things have happened. Most people don't overeat in the morning, they overeat in the evening. And so trying to focus on lifestyle and habit change, stuff that can last for the long term, versus just saying, I can stick to this. I know it's no carb, no fat, all protein, with whatever supplement is being promoted. But if I could just get through this 10 weeks, I'll lose that 15 pounds. And okay, but then what after that, right? Because once you stop doing that, you're just going to regain and you're going to be back in the same place, or based on the data, probably worse.
Right. Very interesting. So with all of those changes, and just practically speaking, so let's say we go through something like that, what can we look for? A lot of hormonal changes are going on, like you said, are evidence of that. So practically speaking, I know you said loss of sleep or lack of sleep is one. What are some other changes that we can look for, like in our bodies, that will kind of alert us maybe to check that out or get tested for that, or what can we do about that?
Yeah, I mean, if you're having, difficulty losing weight on pretty low calories, that's a sign that you may be having quite a bit of metabolic adaptation and hormonal adaptations. Also mood perturbations, that's actually pretty common in the literature, that if you diet long enough, actually my friend, one of the case studies I referred to earlier, his name's Dr. Chris Foss, and I actually was doing his bodybuilding prep for this case study. And he was getting ready for a series of Natural Pro shows and documented his whole journey because he was in grad school at the time. And Chris is one of the most laid back people you will ever meet. Like quiet, not assuming. I don't even ever think I saw him raise his voice once. And by the end, his markers of mood was basically that he was a psychopath.
Goodness.
Now again, I don't want to oversell it. But he was very mood perturbed, right?
Okay.
And that's somebody who's very, and I can speak to this. I was not exactly a joy to be around when I was that lean. So, if you're starting to have those sorts of things, also like lightheadedness, just standing up, that's kind of can be common in people who are kind of over dieted. Any kind of I think sleep is a big one. Cortisol tends to go up, but of course, if you're not looking for that, you wouldn't know. And then overall kind of just becoming overly you want to be thoughtful about what you eat, but when it consumes your entire day, thinking about what you're going to eat, or what food is going to be here, or how am I going to deal with this situation, or just your whole day kind of revolves around food and when you're going to work out. That's probably also, now that can be something totally separate as well. That can just be like a kind of an OCD mental disorder, right? If we look at something like anorexia, that's not, anorexia itself is kind of a form of OCD. It's just a control thing.
Exactly.
A lot of, that's why just telling somebody who's anorexic, oh, well, you're already really skinny. Well, that's not why they're doing it. But yeah, if you start finding yourself being overly involved in those sorts of things, you may want to get a panel done. But moreover, I think, even during my career at certain times, I probably should have talked to a counselor who was involved with, food therapy. I think anybody, I would say that over 60 to 70% of people at some point have had some kind of, I don't want to say eating disorder, but abnormal relationship with food. But that tends to be the norm, just because of what we are told in the media. This food is bad, this food is bad. If you went through and watched every Netflix documentary, you would walk out saying, okay, well, I can breathe air, and I can drink mountain purified water, I think, and maybe I could have a little bit of coffee. That would be about what you think you could have. So unfortunately, this also has the effect of leaving the general public completely confused about what to do and having no idea. So I don't envy having a background in nutrition. I can kind of sift through what's BS and what's not, but I don't envy the average person, because keep in mind, documentaries and news agencies, they're just trying to get headlines. You know, they don't really care about the truth. They care about what will sell. Because at the end of the day, they're for profit and they have to put money in their pockets, and that's understandable. But unfortunately, for the average person, that means that a lot of misinformation gets conveyed.
Absolutely. Right.
Just to wrap things up, I know you probably walked hundreds of clients through reverse dieting. Would you recommend that as the best approach if you, like we've been talking about, have found that you have had metabolic adaptations, hormonal adaptations to weight loss and dieting and need to get yourself out of it?
Yeah, so just to kind of clarify, reverse dieting is a method of basically the opposite of dieting. You are adding in calories slowly to try to get the opposite adaptation, to try to make your metabolism faster, so that in the future, hopefully, you have a more effective weight loss platform. So it would be, the best way I can describe it, it's like when you invest money, you're taking money away from yourself that you could have right now, and you're putting it away so that the idea being in the future, you're going to have more money, right? So with reverse dieting, you're actively not dieting, you're not trying to lose fat, you're adding in calories slowly to enhance your metabolic rate, so that hopefully the next time you go to lose fat, because your metabolic rate is faster, it's going to be more effective. And also, just from a practical perspective, for people who have, and I've seen this so many times, and this tends, I mean, once I started talking about this stuff around 2013, just especially with females, because I mean, what does society tell you guys from a young age? You need to be skinny. You need to worry about what you look like. You know, this and that. I mean, honestly, and this is not a knock, I have never met a girl who said she wasn't fat. I have not met one who at some point didn't call herself fat, even when they were. So, I mean, it actually is a really like disturbing thing and unfortunate.
Really?
But I think y'all would probably agree with me on that. That I mean, if you know anybody who hasn't, I mean, and that's you know, maybe I've called myself fat before, you know, but never actually believed it. But so I think that the idea of not dieting is hard for a lot of women in particular, but they also tend to have such an extensive diet history that is their default. One of my questions I ask people is, what is your dieting history? And I mean, there's people out there who have pretty much been on a diet, some diet for 10 years, you know, where they're trying to lose fat, or at least their stated goal is to lose fat. Now within that, they may have times where they regain weight, or they have some binges or whatnot. But over time, I mean, that really, what are you telling your body? You're telling your body that you're in a caloric deficit. We need to be thrifty with calories, because the goal of your body is to keep you alive long enough, basically, to pass on your DNA. That's the goal of your body. I mean, we're talking from an evolutionary perspective, right? It doesn't care about you having abs. It doesn't care about any of this other stuff. So if you're always telling it, hey, food is scarce, it is going to adapt to keep you alive, which is slowing down your metabolic rate so you don't burn through everything, right? During times of there's what's called the thrifty gene hypothesis. The reason we're all sitting here today is because our ancestors were the ones with the slower metabolisms. Because when famine hit, guess who died first? It was the really lean people who had really fast metabolisms, right? So what's great for looking good on the beach isn't really great for survival.
Right.
But the idea of reverse dieting is to kind of introduce the body to, oh hey, food is not scarce anymore, right? And sustaining that. And you know, if it's somebody who's been dieting for a really long period of time, it may take a really long reverse diet, right? And so, but I've had cases where it took them years to kind of get back to normal. And I've had people where, and it's usually proportional to diet history. A great example is I had a client, her name's Aria Demi, she's IPV Bikini Pro now, but she only had really one really bad diet. She only dieted for about like 9 months out of her life, like actively really dieted. She was an athlete when she was younger, would eat for sport. But it was a really bad diet, really bad. And it took us about 9 months to get her back to a good caloric intake. But then we started dieting her, and she responded just fine. Like it was like that was all it needed, you know.
Wow.
But then I've had people again who were, it's been, you know, over a year, and even then we're just now getting to the point where they can kind of maybe lose a few pounds, right? So you can always lose weight. It just depends on how extremely you want to go, right? So my goal is to get people to be able to lose weight on a healthy amount of calories. ease, something that's not so disruptive to the lifestyle. But for some people that's going to take a lot of work. But I do think, as of now, until pharmacy catches up or our knowledge increases, and I'm actually working on hopefully designing a reverse dieting study here soon so we can understand more about it. But until that catches up, I think that this is a good option for those people, with the understanding that it's not magic and it may take a long time. And I wish I had better news, but unfortunately, we're dealing with millions of years of evolution.
Right.
And trying to get a quick fix to change our genes, it's going to be difficult. But I will say that there is hope, because obesity epidemic really started about 60 years ago, and our genes didn't drastically change in 60 years. So there's something we're doing, whether it be activity, overconsumption, both environmental factors possibly, we don't know, that change that's causing this trend. So it's going to be interesting to see what research comes up, and I think we're going to find out a lot with epigenetics and nutrigenomics and metabolomics. I think we're going to find out a lot more in the next 10 to 20 years.
Gotcha. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Norton.
You're very welcome.
Thank you guys for watching. Just check out our blog, Imperishable, for more information about fitness, health, and wellness.